While defending a cluster of Imperial worlds, Commander Dante led a boarding party onto a seemingly abandoned Ark of Omen. Within the corpse-strewn expanse of the space hulk known as Night Terror, the Blood Angels discovered mysteries beyond anything they had expected. Few loyalists had boarded an Ark of Omen. Of those, almost all who survived the experience had been too busy fighting for their lives to learn much. Commander Dante's force was thus offered a unique opportunity when they found Night Terror reduced to a drifting charnel house, with even its most monstrous denizens banished or driven into the depths. Even as Dante puzzled over the slaughtered heretics and the otherworldly foliage sprouting amongst them, his librarians found the Ark's captive warp portal. This shimmering disk of empiric energies was caged by an elaborate mechanism at the heart of a vaulted chamber. Organotechnic control shrines surrounded it. Cadaverous statues flanked a rune-inscribed ramp leading up to the portal's maw. From the distribution of slain cultists and blood spray patterns, the Blood Angels could tell many heretics had died defending the portal, but the device had not been employed to summon reinforcements to the fight. After performing what divinations they could, the librarians declared that this portal was intended to receive some artifact and transport it elsewhere. Such a conclusion tallied with the scant reports of strange prizes seized by Bale fleets and spirited away to their Arks of Omen. Yet this only raised more unsettling questions. What linked these peculiar arcana? Surely even the servants of chaos were not insane enough to steal lumps of bedrock, broken machines, and time-worn statues without greater purpose. The captive portals must be intended to transport the strange prizes, but to where? Did they all go to the same place? And, most maddening and ominous of all, to what end? Perhaps it was some spark of his Primarch's prescience stirring in his blood, or his great experience speaking. Whatever the case, Commander Dante knew that the answers to these questions were vital. Thus, even as he took up the quest to discover more about the mysterious force that had depopulated Night Terror, the chapter master assigned several strike forces to a different mission, each led by a librarian and borne aboard swift sword-class frigates. These warrior bands were charged with discovering the secrets of the warp portals aboard the Arks of Omen, and, through them, the dark secrets behind the artifacts being seized by the Bale fleets. Epistolary Venato Rallion was the most senior Blood Angels librarian to board Night Terror, and he had examined its portal chamber in detail. He was a natural choice to lead one of Dante's questing forces. Rallion was a warrior mystic with over a century of combat experience, a well-respected commander who had forged honor bonds both within the Blood Angels chapter and beyond. He wasted no time in assembling his strike force from amongst those battle brothers who had won his respect during his long decades of war. Rallion himself was amongst the more gifted of the Blood Angels' psychers. What truly elevated him was the precision and control with which he wielded his powers. His craggy features radiated reassurance, his demeanor measured wisdom. He rarely raised his voice, yet his stern words were heard by all and given great weight. So it was, too, when Rallion unleashed the powers of the warp. Eschewing pyrotechnic flair, the epistolary instead focused the tightly trammelled fury of his red thirst into pinpoint manifestations. He could puncture foes' hearts, sever their spines, or overload their delicate mechanical systems from half a battlefield away with the accuracy and power of a sniper's shot. Further augmenting both his authority and might, Rallion wielded the masterwork force sword Carminius. Before this relic weapon's fury no shield could hold, while the sight of it caused the hearts of all Blood Angels to swell with pride and determination. Several other heroes of the chapter aided Rallion in his quest. There was the sanguinary priest Matteo Donus, an unusually dour character amongst his chapter, yet one whose deep conviction and eye for danger had long ago impressed Rallion. The two warriors fought alongside one another whenever the fates allowed. There was Verante Chalmo, a tech marine possessed of a relentless determination that bordered upon the obsessive and whose lack of charisma was more than made up for by his merciless strength of will. Then there was the dynamic Lieutenant Tasson Leodus, who was in many ways the polar opposite of both Donus and Chalmo. Aggressive, garrulous, and possessed of a swift wit, the lieutenant personified the most charismatic facets of his chapter's gene-sire, and was a firm favorite with those who followed him to war. The warriors Raelian led to battle were drawn from amongst the Blood Angels' 2nd and 3rd companies. There were the intercessors of Squad Agalno, who formed the backbone of the force, and the assault intercessors of Squad Gabrius, youthful hotheads hand-picked by Lieutenant Leodas himself. The Blade Guard of Squad Aurelian, meanwhile, were sworn to the stoic defence of Brother Donas, and they had vowed to shield the sanguinary priest wherever he undertook his sacred duties. Aggressor Squad Dantos and Eradicator Squad Enzos provided the strike force's heavy firepower. The former went about their duties with a ferocity that raised eyebrows amongst their commanders, while the latter were infamous for their gallows sense of humour and the ruthless artistry with which they plied their weapons. The strike force was completed by Scout Squad Gatalo, whose grizzled sergeant had a reputation for turning out bands of accomplished but bloodthirsty swordsmen. This then was the questing band who took ship aboard the swift frigate Star of Dawn and set off to discover the secrets of the Arks of Omen. They faced a dark and dangerous mission, and as yet had little idea how they might complete it. Yet they were a potent force of expert warriors. If anyone could fulfill the duty appointed to them, it was the battle brothers of Strike Force Raelian. After taking counsel with his officers to garner suggestions for how the quest should proceed, Raelian first had the Star of Dawn make warp for the Gygos system. Rumour had it a Bale fleet had been sighted bearing down on the shrine world of Pathasos. Raelian was not yet certain how to complete his mission. The Arks of Omen were vast and deadly, even without taking into account their attendant Bale fleets, and one frigate stood no chance against such a foe. Yet he was not sure by what means study from afar or covert infiltration could be effected, or whether they would prove sufficient. However, in Raelian's experience, opportunities presented themselves to the proactive. He hoped that, by trailing their quarry and watching for an opening, the Blood Angels would see a way forward in their quest. He was also conscious that, in an era as dark as this, the might of the Blood Angels was sorely needed all across the Imperium. They could not afford to waste more time than they must, even in a duty as vital as this. Thank you so much for watching. If you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing and liking. This helps me make more content from our beloved grim darkness of the far future. For now, let's continue. By the time Star of Dawn translated into the Gygos system, the Ark and its fleet had wrought havoc and moved on. The Blood Angels bore witness to the horrors left in the heretics' wake. Slain void ships guttered amidst the darkness. Vox channels rang with laments for the numberless dead, while shrine cities and defense platforms burned. Raelian brought his force into orbit above ravaged Pathasos, but it soon became clear there was little to be learned here. The foe had bombarded the planet's defensive bastions before launching a planet-wide invasion, during which countless relics and precious tomes had been stolen. Any, or perhaps none, might have been the prizes sought by this Ark of Omen. It was impossible to tell. The Blood Angels deployed to Pathasos' surface nonetheless, for heretic forces yet remained, left behind by their Bale fleet. Any hope that a knowledgeable victim could be snatched for interrogation soon evaporated, however. The traitors that remained on the shrine world were dregs, fanatical cultists and renegades who had descended into barbarism, madness, or mindless mutation. Knowing they could not put aside their duty to aid the planet's scattered defenders, Strike Force Raelian departed Pathasos and the Gygos system with heavy hearts. Trials and disappointments followed. The Bale fleets were not attacking en masse, but were rather scattered across vast galactic gulfs, even as travel and communication were catastrophically hamstrung by the turbulence of the warp. It took Strike Force Raelian many weeks to detect each lead they were able to find, and longer still to chase down what often proved to be phantasmal or long-departed quarry. Reports of a Bale fleet attacking the Valmore belt turned out to be mistaken and brought the Strike Force into an ill-matched conflict with kin of the Cronus hegemony. The Blood Angels retreated rather than risk needless annihilation. The next report of the Beast in Scarlet Bale fleet assailing the Thenite worlds proved accurate. The Blood Angels found their quarry locked in a ferocious void battle with a Necron fleet. The Star of Dawn closed to scanning range, Raelian hoping to study the Beast in Scarlet while the Ark's masters were distracted and embattled. However, by the time the frigate was forced to disengage by Necron tomb ships, it had become clear that external energy spectra could tell the Blood Angels little. They would likely have to get aboard an Ark if they wished to learn more. Rallian was not willing to risk lives in a boarding action without a far clearer plan of what they should do once aboard their target Ark. It was not enough to fight their way to the warp portal and hope for insights once they reached it. The time had come to call upon the aid of an old honor brother, whom Rallian had not seen in almost half a century. Battered but unbowed, the Star of Dawn turned its prow toward distant Istruma, homeworld of the Tome Keepers chapter. Epistolary Rallian at last enjoyed good fortune in achieving a swift and safe warp transit to Istruma. Moreover, upon arriving at that solemn world, he found the battle brother he sought cloistered away amidst the Tome Keepers' endless libraries. Rallian experienced a quietly joyous reunion with Codicier Bakir before the two librarians turned to more serious matters. To Rallian's surprise, he found the insightful Bakir was already studying the very problem with which he wrestled, albeit from a different starting point. Taciturn and somber, Brother Bakir is a solitary soul within the Tome Keepers chapter and something of an enigma to his battle brothers. Noble born into the ranks of House Maru, it is rumored that he entered the trial of pages the Tome Keepers selection process for new aspirants, voluntarily, rather than take up his duties as the head of his family. Bakir has never talked about his past, nor have his fellow librarians ever gleaned anything from him, for he is a master of obfuscation, misdirection, and illusion. While these psychic talents have proven useful in many theatres of war, particularly in service to vanguard strike forces, Bakir's greatest strength lies in his study of warp portals and the manipulation of imperial tides. He has devoted much of his time over his 2 centuries of service to seeking an understanding of these phenomena, and it was his dire warnings that saw the Tome Keepers' first company redeploy to the Cadian Gate just before Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade poured from it. The Tome Keepers had their own closely guarded means of garnering information from across the war-torn galaxy, and it had long been habit between Rallian and Bakir that they not pry into their respective chapters' secrets. Rallian accepted at face value the Codicier's revelation that he had been able to piece together fragments of multiple after-action reports and distress calls from war zones where the Arks of Omen had attacked. Bakir had noted references, however tangential or brief, to the warp portals that every Ark of Omen seemed to possess. There were more data points the Codicier had compiled and correlated that steadily firmed up his conclusions, but time was pressing, and Rallian was willing to take his honor brother's assertions on trust. It was enough to know that Bakir, like the Blood Angels, had concluded that understanding the portals and their purpose could be key to defeating the Arks of Omen. What Rallian had hoped, and Bakir now confirmed, was that the learned Codicier had plumbed his chapter's most restricted books of lore and discovered a potential solution to their problem. It was a psychic ritual Bakir called the Rite of Echoes, combining his extensive studies of empiric portals and real space entanglement with insights from scholars dating back to pre-imperial times. He described the rite to Rallian as dropping a stone down a well and listening to its echoes in order to determine the depth of the well and the destination point of the stone. Of course, this undertaking was infinitely more complex and perilous. Their well, Bakir observed, was likely an entire labyrinth of tunnels, all emptying out into other wells, and infested with malevolent entities who did not take kindly to the dropping of stones. When Rallian expressed concerns at the risks involved, Bakir laughed bleakly. He had not yet been able to attempt his ritual, he explained, because his chapter master had refused point-blank the Codicier's request for a strike force to help him. This was because the rite could only be conducted in the presence of an active and fully awakened warp portal, and such a thing could only be found aboard or attached to a battle-ready and operational Ark of Omen. It was, in short, a virtual suicide mission, which the understrength and far-scattered Tome Keepers could not afford. Now, though, with the aid of Strike Force Rallian, Bakir believed there might be a chance, albeit not for a headlong assault. However, Rallian's warriors, supplemented with whatever battle brothers Bakir could call upon, represented a formidable enough force that they might board a damaged or embattled Ark, while its defenders' attention was turned to wider conflict. Then, moving swiftly and accepting that steep casualties were likely, They could push to the site of the warp portal, conduct their ritual, and pull out before the scattered defenders of the colossal Ark could fully mobilize. Returning by whatever means to the Star of Dawn, provided the frigate had been able to evade the guns of the foe, the survivors of the strike force would escape with the vital knowledge they had gained. It was a desperate plan, and the librarians debated its necessity and nuances for long hours. In the end, they agreed that the Emperor's angels had been built for such odds as these, and that the ends justified the risks. Moreover, Bakir confided that he knew where they might begin their hunt, provided they moved quickly. Word had reached the Tome Keepers of an attack upon a deep-void astropathic relay station in the same subsector as Istruma. The assault had been conducted by a Bale fleet, and at its head sailed the vast and malevolent Ark known as the Herald of Misery. Thank you so much for watching. I would like to thank all my subscribers for their continued support. It truly does mean the world to me. If you like this content, let me know in the comments below, and leave a like if you did. Until next time, your grateful Chief Apothecary.